Marcus Wellington III had everything money could buy, except the one thing that mattered most to his mother: happiness. At 34, he was the heir to a pharmaceutical empire worth $847 million, living in a Manhattan penthouse that graced architectural magazines, driving cars that cost more than most people's homes. But Eleanor Wellington watched her son with growing concern from her Park Avenue mansion. Behind his perfectly tailored suits and confident business demeanor, she saw the loneliness that had consumed him since his father's death 3 years ago. That's when Sophia Rivera entered their lives. Marcus met Sophia at a community health clinic in Queens where she worked as a nurse practitioner. She was volunteering her time at a free medical outreach program, the same program that Wellington Pharmaceuticals had donated $2 million to support. Marcus had gone there for a corporate photo opportunity, expecting to shake hands, take pictures, and leave. Instead, he found himself captivated by a woman who barely looked up from the elderly patient she was treating when he entered. "Mr. Wellington," she said without ceremony when finally introduced, "thank you for the donation. We can treat about 400 more patients this year because of it." No flattery, no recognition of his status, just genuine gratitude for the impact on her community. Marcus found himself returning to the clinic, first monthly, then weekly, then finding excuses to volunteer alongside Sophia. For the first time in years, he felt useful rather than just wealthy. Their relationship developed slowly, built on shared values rather than shared social circles. Sophia lived in a modest apartment in Astoria, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and seemed genuinely unaware of Marcus's net worth beyond his obvious ability to make large charitable donations. "I don't need to be taken care of," she told him during one of their walks through Central Park. "I need a partner who understands that money is a tool, not a purpose." Marcus fell in love with her perspective as much as her person. Eleanor Wellington was not pleased. "She's using you, darling," Eleanor said over dinner at their private club. "These people always are. These people. You know what I mean. She works at a clinic in Queens, Marcus. She sees your name on donation checks. This isn't romance, it's a business transaction." Marcus set down his fork, his jaw tightening. "Mother, Sophia doesn't know the full extent of our wealth. She thinks I'm successful, but not exceptionally so. Don't be naive. Everyone knows who the Wellingtons are." But Eleanor's research into Sophia revealed something troubling, or so she believed. Sophia Rivera had grown up in foster care, worked 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school, and had student debt that would take her decades to repay. To Eleanor, this wasn't admirable. It was suspicious. "She's positioning herself perfectly," Eleanor confided to her longtime friend, Margaret Ashford. "Poor background, noble profession. Just vulnerable enough to seem genuine while being calculating enough to land Wellington." Eleanor decided to take action. While Marcus and Sophia's relationship deepened over 6 months of quiet dinners, volunteer work, and long conversations about their hopes for making the world better, Eleanor was conducting her own investigation. She hired Blackstone Investigations, Manhattan's most discreet private detective agency, to build a comprehensive profile on Sophia Rivera. The report that landed on Eleanor's mahogany desk 3 weeks later contained everything: Sophia's foster care records, her academic transcripts, her employment history, even her credit score and spending patterns. Subject: maintains modest lifestyle consistent with reported income, the report concluded. No evidence of extravagant purchases, gambling, or financial irresponsibility. No previous relationships with wealthy individuals. Pattern suggests genuine character rather than opportunistic behavior. But Eleanor read between the lines differently. Sophia's history of instability, 12 foster homes before aging out of the system at 18, convinced Eleanor that her son was being manipulated by someone desperate for security. "She's exactly what she appears to be," Marcus told his mother when she pressed for details about Sophia's background. "Someone who's worked for everything she has and wants to help people. That's what makes her dangerous, Marcus. She's perfected the art of appearing genuine." Eleanor's fears escalated when Marcus mentioned that he and Sophia were discussing moving in together. "Are you planning to support her?" Eleanor asked pointedly. We're planning to support each other. Marcus, be realistic. She makes $67,000 a year. You spend more than that on wine. That night, Eleanor made a decision that would change everything. She would approach Sophia directly. The coffee shop Sophia had suggested for their meeting was a small place in Astoria, nothing like the upscale Manhattan establishments Eleanor frequented. She felt conspicuous in her Chanel suit among the young professionals and college students. Sophia arrived exactly on time, wearing scrubs from her clinic shift, looking tired but maintaining the quiet dignity that had apparently captivated Marcus. "Mrs. Wellington, thank you for reaching out," Sophia said, sliding into the booth across from Eleanor. "I've been hoping we could talk." Eleanor studied the young woman who threatened everything she'd planned for her son's future. Sophia was undeniably beautiful, but in a natural way that required no enhancement. Her eyes held intelligence and something Eleanor found unsettling: complete lack of intimidation. "Sophia, I'll be direct. I know about your background. Foster care, student debt, your financial situation. I understand why Marcus appeals to you." "I'm not sure what you mean. My son is worth nearly $1 billion. His inheritance will make him one of the wealthiest men in America. I think you understand exactly what I mean." Sophia's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "Mrs. Wellington, Marcus told me his family was successful in pharmaceuticals. He never mentioned specific amounts. Don't insult my intelligence. Everyone knows the Wellington name. I knew the company name from donation acknowledgments at the clinic. I didn't research your family's personal wealth because it wasn't relevant to my relationship with your son." Eleanor leaned forward. "It's relevant now. Marcus is considering proposing to you." This was news to Sophia, who blinked in surprise. "He hasn't discussed marriage with me because he's waiting for my approval, and I can't give it." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. "May I ask why?" Eleanor had rehearsed this moment, prepared her arguments about social compatibility, shared backgrounds, the responsibilities that came with wealth. Instead, she found herself improvising. "Because you'll destroy him. Not intentionally, perhaps, but inevitably. The wealth gap between you is too significant. You'll either resent him for having what you've never had, or become dependent on what he can provide. Either way, you'll both become people you don't recognize." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "Mrs. Wellington, what would you like me to do?" Eleanor reached into her purse and withdrew a cashier's check. She debated the amount for weeks, finally settling on a figure that was substantial enough to be life-changing, but not so large as to seem insulting. "I'd like you to disappear from Marcus's life. This check is for $500,000. It's enough to pay off your student loans, buy a house, start over somewhere new. All I ask is that you end your relationship with my son cleanly and permanently." Sophia stared at the check without touching it. "You want to pay me to break up with Marcus? I want to pay you to give him the chance to find someone from his own world. Someone who won't be overwhelmed by the life he can offer. Someone you approve of. Someone who won't hurt him." Sophia finally picked up the check, examining it as if it were a curious artifact from another civilization. "Mrs. Wellington, do you love your son?" "Of course I love him. Everything I do is to protect him." "Then you should know that Marcus has never been happier than he's been these past 6 months. He talks about finding purpose in his life, about using his advantages to make a real difference. That's not coming from wealth or status. That's coming from being with someone who sees the best in him." Eleanor felt her carefully constructed argument beginning to crumble. "Sophia, you have no idea what you're asking for. The scrutiny, the expectations, the way people will treat you once they know. The wealth will change you. Or it might not. It always does." Sophia folded the check and placed it back on the table. "Mrs. Wellington, I need to ask you something, and I need an honest answer. Are you trying to protect Marcus for me, or are you trying to protect yourself from losing control over him?" The question hit Eleanor like a physical blow. She'd spent 3 years managing every aspect of Marcus's life since his father's death, making decisions about charitable foundations, social connections, business partnerships. Sophia represented something she couldn't control or predict. I'm trying to protect my son from making a mistake that will define the rest of his life. What if it's not a mistake? What if I'm the best thing that's ever happened to him? Eleanor stood abruptly, her composure finally cracking. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The Wellington fortune comes with responsibilities you can't imagine. Board positions, social obligations, political connections. You think you can learn to navigate that world? I think Marcus and I can navigate it together. Take the money, Sophia. Walk away while you still can. Sophia stood as well, leaving the check on the table. Mrs. Wellington, I appreciate your concern for Marcus. But if he wants to end our relationship, he needs to be the one to tell me, not his mother. As Eleanor watched Sophia walk away, leaving $500,000 on a coffee shop table, she realized she'd made a terrible miscalculation. Marcus found his mother in her study that evening, staring out the window at the city lights, the rejected check lying on her desk like evidence of failure. She told me about your conversation, he said quietly, closing the door behind him. Eleanor didn't turn around. I suppose she accepted the money and disappeared. She told me what you offered, what you said, and what she said to you. Then she asked me a question that I've been thinking about all day. What question? She asked if I was ready to choose between the woman I love and the mother who raised me. Eleanor finally turned, seeing an expression on her son's face she'd never seen before. Not anger, but something worse, disappointment. Marcus, I was trying to protect you. From what? From someone who makes me happy? From someone who sees me as more than just a bank account? From someone who will hurt you when reality sets in? Marcus sat down across from his mother's desk, picking up the rejected check. Mother, do you know why Sophia didn't take this money? Because she's holding out for more. Because she told me that the moment she takes money for walking away from someone she cares about, she becomes exactly what you think she already is. Eleanor felt the ground shifting beneath her certainties. Marcus, you don't understand the pressures that wealth brings to relationships. Then help me understand. Don't try to buy off the first person who's made me feel like myself in years. She's not from our world. What world is that exactly? The world where we're so afraid of being used that we can't trust anyone to love us. The world where we're so isolated by money that we can't form genuine connections. Eleanor sank into her chair, suddenly feeling every one of her 62 years. Your father and I met at Yale. Same background, same expectations, same understanding of what our life would be. It worked because we both knew the rules. And were you happy? The question caught Eleanor off guard. She'd had many things with Marcus's father. Compatibility, shared goals, mutual respect. But happiness? We were well suited. That's not what I asked. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Your father was a good man, but our marriage was as much a business arrangement as a romantic one. We managed the Wellington assets, maintained the family reputation, raised you to inherit both the fortune and the responsibilities. It was successful by every measure that mattered, except the measure of whether you loved each other. We cared for each other deeply. Mother, I love Sophia. Not her background or her potential or her compatibility with our lifestyle. I love her. And she loves me, not my money or my name or my potential as a provider. Eleanor looked at her son, really looked at him, for the first time in months. The tension lines around his eyes had softened. His smile came easier. He carried himself with a confidence she hadn't seen since before his father's death. She makes you happy, Eleanor said, finally acknowledging what she'd been refusing to see. She makes me want to be better than I am. And if the wealth changes her, then we'll deal with it together. But Mother, what if it doesn't? What if she's exactly who she appears to be? Someone who sees money as a tool for helping people rather than a source of identity. Eleanor picked up the check, staring at the amount she'd thought would solve her problem. She didn't even hesitate to refuse this. Because she can't be bought. Not because she's holding out for more, but because she values things you can't put a price on. What do you need from me, Marcus? I need you to give her a chance. A real chance. Not as a threat to our family, but as someone who might become part of it. Eleanor folded the check and tore it in half. What if I can't? Then you'll lose me too. The threat wasn't delivered with anger, but with the quiet certainty of someone who'd already made his choice. Marcus, I've spent 3 years trying to prepare you for the responsibilities that come with our wealth. I can't bear the thought of watching you give that up for someone who doesn't understand what it means. What if instead of giving it up, I found someone to share it with? Someone who could help me use it better than I ever could alone. Eleanor looked out the window again, watching the city where her son had found love in a place she'd never thought to look. Tell me about her, she said finally. Not her background or her finances. Tell me who she is. Over the next hour, Marcus painted a picture of Sophia that Eleanor had never seen. Not the opportunistic fortune hunter she'd imagined, but a woman whose experiences had shaped her into someone uniquely equipped to handle both poverty and wealth without being defined by either. She grew up in 12 different foster homes, Marcus explained. She learned early that security comes from what you can build for yourself, not what you can take from others. The money doesn't impress her because she's never counted on external resources for her sense of worth. But surely she sees the advantages it could provide. Of course. But she talks about those advantages in terms of what we could do for other people. The clinic where we met could expand its services. We could fund nursing scholarships for students from foster care backgrounds. She has ideas about healthcare access that would never occur to someone who's never been without it. Eleanor found herself grudgingly intrigued. What about the social aspects? The galas, the board meetings, the political functions. She says she'd rather learn about them than fake her way through them. Last week she asked me to explain how pharmaceutical patents work because she wanted to understand the business impact of our charitable giving. And Marcus smiled. She had insights about generic drug access in underserved communities that I'd never considered. She sees angles I miss because she's lived experiences I haven't. For the first time, Eleanor wondered if she'd been protecting Marcus from an opportunity rather than a threat. Marcus, what does she think about me? She thinks you're a mother who loves her son enough to fight for what she believes is best for him. She respects that even though she disagrees with your methods. She said that. She said she hopes someday you'll trust her enough to let her prove that love doesn't have to be about taking advantage. Eleanor felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the fear that had driven her to that coffee shop. I owe her an apology. She'd appreciate that. But, Mother, she needs more than an apology. She needs to know that if we move forward together, you won't spend our entire relationship waiting for her to prove your suspicions right. Eleanor nodded slowly. What would you like me to do? Have dinner with us. Not at the club, not with an agenda. Just dinner where you can get to know the person I fell in love with. And if I still have concerns after getting to know her, then we'll address them honestly together, as adults who care about each other. Eleanor looked at the torn check on her desk, evidence of how badly she'd misjudged both Sophia and her son. Marcus, I need to ask you something. Are you planning to propose to her? I was. I've been carrying a ring for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. What stopped you? I realized I wanted your blessing, not just your resignation to the inevitable. Eleanor felt tears threaten for the first time in months. Her son still valued her opinion, still wanted her to be part of his happiness rather than an obstacle to it. Then ask her, Eleanor said quietly. And when she says yes, bring her here so I can welcome her to the family properly. Marcus stood and kissed his mother's cheek. Thank you for trusting me. After he left, Eleanor sat alone in her study, contemplating how completely she'd misunderstood the situation. She'd been so focused on protecting Marcus from fortune hunters that she'd nearly driven away the one person who truly didn't